So hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, The Big Four. Welcome back to this course, which is called EENG 103, Computer Sciences for Engineering. So I'm going to talk more, I'm going to add more knowledge on variables. What are variables? I understand that we've used variables in our last program. Then so we need to add a little bit of flesh on the aspect of variables. So what are variables? So a variable is a variable is a given name to a value. It's a way of storing and manipulating data in a program. You can think of a variable as a labeled box where you can store a value. So what we are basically saying is when you assign a variable, we have set aside a space or in the Python memo where you assign, I want to store something here. So if it's a string, we're going to talk more about it. Okay, so how do you assign variables? So assigning variables, you need to first name the variable, and then you need to give an operator which is equal. When assigning variables, for example, in our last video we talked about the variable name equal to. So as soon as I do this, before I fill in between the quotation marks, when I say name is equal to, what has happened is Python has set aside a space in its memory where it's saying I'm going to store something, the variable code name. So as soon as you put the variable, let's say the name that I want to store is James. So Python has now filled in that box, it has now thrown in the value James. So this first type of a variable, ladies and gentlemen, we have types of variables, is called a string variable. Okay. So we would like to describe this type of variable in our code. Okay, so I'm going to introduce the concept of commenting. Commenting is a way of writing notes inside your code so that when other users want to debug or want to understand what your code means, they can read the notes that this part does this, then that part does that. So to comment in Python, you start with a hashtag and then you write. And then there's a second way of commenting. We're going to talk about it later. When you want to comment a whole paragraph, you use triple quotation marks. Okay. So say hashtag. This first type of a variable is called a string. So the types of variables are named or are determined by the value that you assign to it. For example, in this first part, we've assigned the value James. So James is a word. So words are strings. So this is a string variable. Okay, so that is our first variable. And then the next type of a variable is called an integer variable. Okay, so how do you assign an integer variable? Say we want to talk about date of birth, but now date of birth, we are saying this, we cannot write something like date. Python does not allow us to use space when naming variables. Okay, so how then can we make this tight? Python does not allow us to use spaces when assigning variables, but it is allowed us to use underscore. It can allow us to use underscores. So you can use underscore date of underscore birth underscore. So underscores are used to separate words in a variable sentence, sort of sentence like. Because sometimes you need to assign a variable that describes the value. For example, date of birth. Okay, 2025. So as you have seen right there, the variable 2025 is not in quotation marks. Number two, it is a different color from the value assigned to the variable name. So the value assigned to the variable date of birth is a different color to the value assigned to the variable name. Why? Because these two variables are different. As soon as we don't put quotation marks, especially when writing numbers, we don't put quotation marks. Python already knows that this value is what? Python will already know that this type of a value is an integer or it's a float. When it's an integer, you see that we don't have comma something. It cannot be represented as a fraction. So if we represent it as a fraction, it's that number over 1, which is. Then the other type of a variable is called a float variable. float variable. So float variables are variables that contain numbers in it, but the number is not a whole number. The number can often be represented as a fraction when it is a decimal, so to say. Okay, let's talk about height. Height is equal to remember, when writing numbers we don't put quotation marks. Assign variables 1.75. This can be the height of me. So 1.75, you might wonder, why didn't we put meters there? So Python does not allow us to assign a value to have a variable. Once we put m or meters in front of 1.75, it then Python will then become confused that what is this variable? Is it a string or a integer or a float? So when assigning variables, you don't mix them with their units. Okay. So there are many types of variables. But as we have seen, when assigning variables, we name the variable first, we then put the operator, which is equal, and then we put the value for that variable. Okay. So the types of variables, we have integers, floats, strings. We also have booleans, which are true or false. We have lists. We're going to talk more about these that I'm telling you right now. Then we have what we call tuple, which are ordered immutable collections of items. We also have dictionary, which is an unordered direction, an unordered collection of key value pairs. Okay, so we are going to talk more about this. So how do you name variables? When naming variables, there are three important rules. Number one, you have to use lowercase letters and underscores. You have to use lowercase and letters and underscores. Number two, you have to avoid using numbers as the first character. Number three, you have to use descriptive names, because as you have seen there, let's take for example in this part of the in the string variable example, then we may have two names. We may have the name of the school that the person is learning at, and we also have the user name. So instead of writing name, you may decide to use, it is helpful to use user name. Username. So this is more descriptive. Then a variable with the first capital letter or with any letters in capital is different from a variable with small letters. Like if you let's talk about username, first capital username. Let's say we have another username, but we don't recommend this. Remember, we advise that you use variables. Use only lowercase values when using variables. Don't use capital letters or uppercases. But in this case, I just want to show you that when you use a capital letter against when you use a small letter, is the variable the same? So when you use a small letter, the variable differs. Okay, let's do this. Okay, let's print out this username. Okay, print user name. Remember, when we are printing out the variable, we just call out the name of the variable, not the value. We just call the name of the value so that it prints the value. Okay. So when you read run with fingertips, so let's try to put uppercase E on user name and see if it's the same. Yeah, it will give you an error. Username is not defined because username is not among the variable. This username is a capital letter U or an uppercase letter U. So it is not what it is not found there. So using an uppercase and using a lowercase changes the variable. So but if we change here and then put capital letter U and then hit run, since it's capital letter username, and we are printing capital letter username, we get use. Okay. So we can perform. We are going to talk about integers and mathematical computations, you'll find that we can use these variables to perform mathematical computations. In the last video, we talked about we haven't talked about that. The video is in the next video. We will talk about calculating the date of birth from our previous video. We are going to edit it so that it gives us the date of birth with the age of the user that we've collected in our last video. So we are going to do that in the next coming video. Okay. So to do that, we are going to be using variables to calculate the date of birth. You are going to see. So we can do arithmetic. We can compare. We can use logics if the variables are true or false. So what are the best practices for variables? Number one, try use lowercase values. Most of the times we use lowercase values, but we can also use uppercase if you want. Then number two, use meaningful variable names. Then avoid using global variables. Then use comments to explain your code. So on the part of global variables, we are going to talk more about that. What global variables are. Okay. So so in Python, you may, if you have learned any other language, for example in C, you name the type of a variable. For example, you say int, maybe age is equal to 22. You see. So in Python, you don't do that. In Python, the interpreter already knows the type of a variable. As soon as you name it and you put a value to it, the interpreter knows what type of a variable it is.
Underscore,
is it integer, is it a float, is it
equal to,
it is,
let's say 20 years. Let's say
so,
the user is 20 years old. Then we have current year, current underscore year is equal to, we are in 2025. Okay, we may want to calculate, let's do this, date of, let's comment here and write date of birth. So when you are commenting, Python allows you to use space bars. It allows you to leave spaces between your words. It's fine. It's only when you are dealing with variables that does not allow you to do that. Then date of birth, to calculate date of birth, you are going to say date underscore, let me use small letters, date underscore of underscore birth is equal to, so to calculate the date of birth given the current year and the username, we say the current year, current underscore year minus user age. Okay, so what you have seen right there, what you are seeing right there, we are saying that we are assigning the variable date of birth, but upon assigning this variable date of birth, we want to calculate it by subtracting the current year, by subtracting the user age from the current year. That is how we get the date of birth of a person. So as you can see, the whole line that you have seen right there is comprised of variables. We are creating this variable, and after creating this variable called date of birth, we are using the variable named current year and the variable named user age to do a mathematical computation so that we can get the value of the date of birth. So if you want to know the date of birth, you just have to say date, you have to say print date of birth, date of underscore birth. Okay, let's leave a space right there so that Okay, so let's print out the date of birth. So as you can see, it's 2005 for someone who was born in the year for someone who was born in the year 2005. As of 2025, he will be 20 years old. Okay, so we can do all sorts of mathematical manipulation. We are going to look more on mathematical computation when we talk about integers, float numbers in more detail. So thank you for watching this video. Thank you very much. Please like, share, comment, subscribe.